Hey, I'm Johnny Z. Welcome to the channel. This is part 3 of my Eric Johnson, Virginia inspired guitar build. In the last video, I revealed the guitar, did some sound demos, got to check it out for the first time. And at the end of that video, I had teased about there being a second guitar, and in fact, there is. So in this video, I'm going to do a reveal of build number 2. I'll talk about how and why I ended up with 2 EJ style guitar builds. We'll do some sound comparisons between those 2 guitars, but also throw in a couple of more typical Strat style guitars for reference. I'll get into the specs of the guitars, and then I'll finish off by talking about what I've learned and what some of my personal reflections are about these guitars. Let's dive in. So how and why did I end up with 2 EJ inspired builds here? In the first video, I talked a little bit around Eric as an influence, how I was intrigued with the EJ model when it hit the market. I was super curious about the Sassasfras tone wood in particular. And just surfing Reverb one day, I saw a Sassasfras guitar body come up for sale. It was actually a genuine Fender EJ model. And in that moment, I just decided to go for it to try to build a version of that guitar that would work for me and get a chance to see what the Sassasfras tone wood was all about. So as I was procuring some of the other parts for the guitar, I noticed some more Sassasfras bodies coming up on Reverb that were luthier made Sassasfras bodies, and they looked awesome. I slept on it, but the next day I just took the plunge and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna order the second body and see which one I like better. Of course, once I had both of the bodies in hand, the project took on a life of its own, where if I build 2 guitars, I can keep one of them down-tuned in E flat, or maybe I can even experiment with some different pickups in them. So that's how I ended up with 2 guitars. But for the more abbreviated version of the story, guitar acquisition syndrome. Do I have it? All right, so I'll take you through the specs. Let's start with EJ number 1. This is a Warmoth modern neck made out of roasted maple. It's a one-piece sassafras body. It's weighing in at 4.1 ounces. It has a genuine nitro lacquer finish, a really thin and hard finish with beautiful natural weather checking. And it came relicked by the luthier. The nitro feels great. It's not sticky. And again, it's super thin, really just a perfect finish. The pickups on this are Mojo Tone 59. I read that Eric used late 50s style pickups in his Strats, and based on some sound shootouts, I really was digging the tone of these particular pickups, and they ended up working out great for this guitar. The bridge has EJ's signature Dimarzio HS-2 stacked single coil, and I have wired only one of those coils, just like EJ. The hardware, we've got a vintage Kluson style tuning peg here, but they're locking. And they're also staggered, so it doesn't require a string tree. I have a tusk nut, jumbo frets. I've got a Callahan tremblock, exotic springs. I've got the Highwood saddles. And then the harness on this is done by Guitarman, and he has an EJ model harness that has the types of components EJ is known to use in his vintage Strat, which are like 500K pots. And then lastly, the plastics on this, I was able to source a recreation of the early 50s style plastic. It's commonly referred to as Bakelite or Bakelite. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. That's not the technical name for it. I can't remember the technical name. I'll put it down below. But it looks great. I was really happy with the plastics on it. The pickup covers and the knobs are a little bit aged to match the distressing of the body. And I forgot to mention the neck, because it's roasted, it doesn't require a finish. So this neck is just raw and it feels great. It's just raw and it feels great. All right, so EJ number 2. I'm just going to talk about what's different on this guitar versus EJ number 1. First difference is I did put a finish on the Warmoth roasted maple neck. In this case, I used a Stu Mac finish. It's their boiled linseed oil and beeswax finish. Very easy to apply, one coat. It feels great, it's super smooth, and it actually caused the grain in the wood to pop a bit more. You may notice that in some of the sound comparison videos where the flame is just really three-dimensional and jumping out on this neck. This Sassafras body is a 2-piece. You can see the seam up by the upper bout here. It's made by Fender, so it's a genuine EJ Sassafras body. It's a little heavier than EJ1. This is coming in at 4.8 ounces versus 4.1. Pickups on this guitar are also different. I used Lawler Blondes in the neck and middle. And I went with a Seymour Duncan pickup in the bridge, and it's the model that David Gilmour used for a good chunk of his career. Being a huge Gilmour fan, I was really curious to try that pickup out. It's more of a humbucker style pickup in a single coil format. Another difference is with the bridge. I ended up installing one of those Graph Tech saddles for the high E string, like Eric does on his guitars. And he says he does it to warm up the tone of the E string to better match that of the B string. I didn't do that on build number 1 because the guitar sounded so perfect to me. I didn't want to mess with it, but on this guitar I took the liberty to try that out. The last difference is the plastic is just modern plastic. It's not a recreation of the Bakelite, but it's been aged and it looks pretty cool. So I'd like to offer a few of my own personal reflections on the sound comparisons. My favorite guitar of the bunch, I would have to say, is my EJ #1. I pick this thing up every day. It inspires me to write and to play, and I really enjoy this guitar. I think it's just super well balanced in all pickup positions. It has a really clear and articulate voice, and I like the bridge pickup. It reminds me a bit of a P90, where it's got more push and attitude than a stock single coil, but it's not quite as full as a full-on PAF style pickup. It's somewhere in between. And really resonant guitar. It really rings and sustains, and you can feel it in your rib cage when you play this guitar. And that's just a really cool feature that makes me want to pick it up and play it even more. My second favorite was my 60s style parts caster. I thought this guitar sounded just as good, a little different, but just as good for me personally in all the positions, with the exception of the bridge position. When going to the lead tone, this single coil is clearly thin and bright, which is cool when you need that, but for that really thick, creamy EJ styled V tone, it's really not ideal for that. My exotic was my go-to guitar for a long period of time. I still love the guitar. I felt like the clean tones were just a little less bright than the EJ. However, I thought the humbucker in the bridge, when you need that extra edge, really stands out, and it's why HSSs are so great. And then lastly, EJ build #2. I think it sounds really good. You don't hear it as much in the video, but when you're playing the guitar, it's something you experience, where when you attack the strings, they don't give back as much as EJ #1. I've heard a lot of people describe a great guitar as that it gives back more energy than you put into it, and EJ1 does that for sure. I thought the bridge pickup was pretty cool on this. It sat somewhere in between the Dimarzio and the exotic, so a little more gain than the EJ1, but a little less gain than a full-on PAF. So cool pickup. Those are my opinions, but do let me know what you're picking up on in the sound comparison. I'd love to hear your observations and what you thought. So in conclusion, the big question is, would I take a project like this on, knowing what I know now? And the answer is a resounding yes. I've ended up with an amazing instrument that inspires me to play and write every day, and I've learned some invaluable skills when it comes to setting up and maintaining guitars that I can apply to my collection. And so for me, even though I don't play #2 as much, all in all, it was well worth it. So that wraps up the video. Thanks a ton for watching. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. See you in the next one. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why. I can't talk. So in this video, I'm going to end up not talking at all.